and welcome to another edition of Lifting Lowdown, the bi-weekly industry podcast brought to you by Lift Hoist International. My name is Guy Harris, and I'm the publisher of LHI, the magazine servicing the global industrial lifting sector. Regular listeners will know that this podcast is not a straightforward interview, but invites industry representatives and figureheads to openly discuss leading topics in a relaxed and friendly manner. As ever, I am joined by co-host Richard Howes of Bridger Howes, a PR and consultancy firm prevalent in the lifting and materials handling sectors. On this episode, we are speaking to Doug Stitt, who has been President and CEO of the Caldwell Group Incorporated for 15 years. Doug graduated from Beloit College, Wisconsin with a BA and an MBA at Rockford University, Illinois. He served as president of the Associated Wire Rope Fabricators in 2016 and was an AWORF board member from 2007 to 2016. Among other industry groups, Caldwell is a member of the Lifting Equipment Engineers Association, American Society of Mechanical Engineers and MHI. On this episode, we are talking below the hook, an oft overlooked yet vital aspect of our industry and the lifting process. Without further ado, let's get into it. Well, welcome to another Lifting Lowdown, guys. Nice to have you back, Rich, as ever.
Yeah, good to be here. Looking forward to getting into this one with Doug. We continue to get mixed news here, don't we, about the COVID situation. I don't know where we are on the curve, to be honest. Are we coming out of lockdown, or are we on the cusp of a dreaded third wave that they're talking about? I don't know. But otherwise, I'm very good and looking forward to this.
Excellent. Well, let's take this opportunity to welcome Doug. Hello, Doug. A
Hello.
warm welcome to Lifting Lowdown. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here, guys.
Fantastic. As are we to have you on the show today. Many of LHI's readers will know you, of course, from your insider columns that you've written for the magazine for some time now. However, it's great to have you joining us on the podcast today. So how are things over in Chicago with COVID at the moment?
Things are, actually improving. Certainly we're getting to a point, during the year weather-wise where people can get outside more, which is a positive in itself. But vaccinations are going well. Cases are dropping. We haven't gotten back to a somewhat normal environment in terms of travel, certainly work travel. But at least in terms of the outlook based on vaccinations and people getting outside, it's moving in the right direction.
Good, because we were speaking with Daniel McKinnon on the last episode, who obviously heads up ProMat, and he was talking about the decision to cancel ProMat, the in-person event, and go to a DX platform. And one of the reasons behind that was because at the time of the decision, Chicago was still looking fairly bad in terms of the virus and people, unfortunately dying from it. So things are getting better, you say?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult environment for exhibitions because I think there's going to be a lot of questions for a while about getting a lot of people together in one enclosed space.
Sure.
I think there's going to be a lot more freedoms, for people to move around individually within small groups. I think you'll start to see, business visits and customer visits. Those things start to come back, but I think it's going to be a real challenge in terms of getting people together for example, a large sales meeting or an exhibition. I think that's going to be a challenge for a while.
Yeah, no, indeed. I mean, and the on-site meetings, of course, inspections, etc., which we'll go on to talk about, I'm sure, is a big part of Caldwell's MO, right?
It is. So we do, a variety of different types of services and inspections for our customers. Some of those things are in our facility, but a lot of what we do is in the field, and certainly that's been impacted by COVID.
Sure. Okay. Well,
more generally, sorry, Guy. More generally, Doug, how's business been? Was there a kind of a hiatus this time last year? then it's been relatively steady. Has it kind of been a little bit up and down since then? How are you because we're sort of marking it almost a year to the day here since our first lockdown. So has that been the case there first of all, and what does that timeline look like from a business standpoint?
Yeah, from what we've seen, and we think a lot of other companies in our industry, the last summer was kind of a free fall when COVID first hit, and then for us it was kind of a long slog to get through the year, and then as we started entering 2021, there's certainly been a number of signs for things improving. So for us, I don't know, Rich, to your question, that we've seen things go up and down as much as it was a big drop, and then it's been a long journey to kind of get back to a more reasonable level of business.
Well, that's
sorry, Guy, go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, that's still fairly welcome news. In fact, what I was going to do is just give you the opportunity, Doug, to speak a little bit about Caldwell. I mean, the Caldwell Group was started in 1954, I believe, by Leslie Caldwell, who I think on your website you promote as an inventor and tinkerer who designed, fabricated and sold special lifting slings from the very beginning. Does this heritage stand fast in the company today?
Actually, it's a different company today than it was back then. Caldwell started out back in 1954, as you said, as a manufacturer of fabricated slings. When Howard Will bought the company in the 1970s, he decided to move into fabricated steel lifting products. And the customers that he was trying to sell those fabricated lifters to were also manufacturers of fabricated slings. So there was a little bit of a conflict there. So he decided to sell the fabricated sling portion of the business off, which interestingly now is Rockford Rigging, a very large rigging shop here in the Midwest.
I see.
Let's take this a little bit. Okay, so away from COVID for a second, and away from Caldwell, to look at it more generally, if we can, then, Doug. So, where is below the hook at the moment? Is it still a kind of relatively undervalued part of the industry? Do we still need to understand more, certainly at user level, about the importance of connecting crane hooks to loads?
Yeah, I think that's a question that we focus on a lot, because as we talked about in a previous conversation, rarely does the crane hook go in directly to the load that it's lifting. Basically, what we tell people who don't know anything about the industry is you've got a crane hook and you've got something that you're lifting, and then there's some kind of device and connection in between, and that's what we do. And there's a lot of expertise that goes into that middle portion that I think certainly gets missed a lot of times in terms of what's required for a safe and well-planned lift.
And what can we do about that? Because my little PR company that I hope listeners have heard of has kind of picked up a bit of a reputation for being representing a lot of kind of component guys, and I think they put below the hook in that category. And I don't make any apology for that, because I think it needs to be championed, and I think the nuts and bolts of the industry needs. Without them, how does the big stuff work, right? So, right. But what can we do about it? Because it just feels a little. I was at a conference back when we could do that sort of stuff, and someone was kind of referred to someone we were in a freeway conversation, and they said to the person, "Oh, you're another below the hook guy." And I don't think they meant disrespect by it, and yet the way they said it was kind of, what they meant was, you don't make great big hulking tower cranes, which I think was their point. But how can we improve that? Is that our is that burden on us as marketeers, as you as manufacturers, as users, as standard bearers? How can we raise the importance of below the hook and moreover attract good young people into this product area?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge. One of the things that we've tried to do, working with your company, Rich, is, trying to promote the stories of the things that we do. One of the things that we haven't done well enough as a company is, kind of talked about, what it is that, Caldwell does and some of the applications. People really don't think about, how some of the lifts and the processes work, and we're trying to share those stories. But it's a continual battle. We work with people all the time. They'll sell multi-million-dollar crane systems, and we'll say, oh, okay, what's going to go on the hook? And it's like, well, we hadn't really thought of that. And one of the things that we try and tell salespeople and distributors is look up. When you walk into a shop, look up, because there's applications that we're not spending enough time talking about.
How often is a kind of, if you've got an anecdote or two, share it without divulging details, but more generally, how much bad practice do you continue to see, and how much are your guys called in to a situation where something has gone wrong because of that, the lack of expertise or ignorance that's been in that below the hook area?
Yeah, the standards, at least in North America, have continued to to grow, which we think is a good thing, because it drives the appropriate design and fabrication of safe lifting equipment. And what we see is that when people try and dabble in below the hook lifters, a lot of times they really don't understand all the guidelines, the design criteria, and we often get called in to say, hey, we've done this, it's not working. The customers pointed out deficiencies that we don't know how to address. And a lot of times, unfortunately, when it gets to that point, it's really, you've got to start over. I mean, there's no saving something that was inefficient or insufficient from the beginning. And we've typically got to come in and design and apply something that's more appropriate to the application.
You're a global organization, Doug. I mean, how do the standards differ around the world?
That's probably a better question for our director of engineering, because he gets involved in that all the time. But certainly, some areas like Australia, I think, they've got some standards that exceed, for example, what we have in North America. Our director of engineering, Tom Eicher, he works with people, for example, in Australia and the EU, to make sure that we're looking at, things correctly beyond what we do many days in the US, to make sure that it fits what we need to do overseas.
What drives innovation then, Doug, in this sector? Because your catalogue is so broad, and you're not making products just for the sake of it. Oh, you're making products because there's an end use requirement for them. But it's, even for someone in the industry, it's perhaps surprising the breadth of the below the hook solutions available. So what drives that? Where does that come from? Do they all start as customizations that you see additional uses for, or somewhere else?
I think that's a really good question for us. 50% of what Caldwell does is standard stock products, and 50% is modified standards, and some certainly many applications that are completely special. So we've got a history of developing products, developing applications, which I believe is part of our DNA. We look for opportunities to introduce new things. Part of that history is, innovation a lot of times isn't just one big aha moment. It's an accumulation of different pieces of information and history that you can pull together and apply to something new. So we also do a lot of communication with our customers. A lot of what we do in terms of new products is driven by the marketplace. And then, some of it is inspiration from, other industries. The Duralite composite beams, that was inspiration from, somebody that was Oz Lifting that was incorporating that into, davit cranes. And, they built their product off of innovations that had been made in the automotive industry, aerospace, other places like that.
I believe you've said in a blog actually, Doug, it's important to highlight reasons not to bow to temptation in terms of product creation. Safety can be a principal reason. Can you elaborate on that a little more?
Yeah, we've to give you one example, we have a product called the Rig Release, which can lift a load, for example, steel roof trusses, set that load down and then release the rigging remotely. We've had requests from companies that would like to use a rig release type of mechanism, but they want to drop the load while the lifter is under load. And that's just not something that we prescribe to.
Okay.
For the rig release to work in its current design, the load needs to be off of it. We don't feel like it's I guess within our scope of business to develop products, for example, that release the load when it's under load. So, there's just certain times where, we decide not to pursue that. Another example is, we have customers that will bring designs to us, and they'll want us to, fabricate a design that's already been proposed for a project. And, in those cases, we go back through and we look at those products in the application, and, sometimes we'll partner in those applications and fabricate the lifter. And other times we'll say, from a design standpoint and safety standpoint, we don't feel this is a good application for us.
So that research and development, that's really down to good dialogue and relations with the end user at the end of the day, is it?
Yeah, and we feel that's one of our strengths. There's a number of, below the hook lifting companies and other lifting companies that can build things, but, we've got many decades of application experience. We've got a very experienced sales engineering staff, and, we sell primarily through distribution, but there's a lot of times where, we'll coordinate with a distributor that we talk directly to the end user. Just because we've got a lot of history and a lot of knowledge that we can help them get exactly where they want to go.
Thank you.
It doesn't have to be a crane or even a hook, though, Doug, does it? It might be a forklift or something else. Is that true?
No, that's a good point from Caldwell's aspect. We again, a generic way to tell somebody what we do that's not familiar with the lifting industry is pretty much, anybody that's lifting something or moving something, we've got an application for them. So as you said, Rich, forklifts and different types of, construction vehicles and, gantry cranes, different types of lifting equipment. We've pretty much done applications for all those.
Do you have to be very careful, therefore, about the marketing and the promotion of them to make sure that they're applied in the right way? Obviously, I guess there could be temptation is probably the wrong word, but there's certainly someone that could easily try and shoehorn the wrong product into the wrong application, couldn't they?
Yeah, we get that, probably weekly, and if anything, we try and be as customer friendly as we can, but we do ask a lot of questions because we want to make sure that products are applied correctly and safely. So we see that often.
And could it literally be a case of someone saying, yeah, but I like that one, and you saying, well, yeah, but that's not actually for your application? Does it get like that, or is that a little bit more of a kind of a consumer kind of market problem?
No, I mean, you kind of going back to an earlier point, you do have to say no at times where, somebody comes in and says, I want this, or a lot of times we see a customer saying, I want another one of these for this application. And, if we don't think it was applied appropriately in the beginning, we're not going to provide one, that we're going to manufacture for that application. So, sometimes you do have to say no.
That's probably a nice segue though, because Caldwell offers on-site inspections, repairs, modifications and training. Is this a dovetailed approach to your design and manufacturing approach too?
Yeah, I mean, it's we within the life cycle of the product, we do more than just manufacture and ship it out, and that's the last that we think of it. We provide spare parts, we provide on-site inspection and service, we provide rebuild services both on-site and back at our facility. So we try and maintain a relationship beyond just the original fabrication of the product. We feel that that's good for the customer and it's good for us because, we see firsthand how it's applied, how it gets used and sometimes abused.
Yeah, sure.
If there's real complexity, Doug, on the load, and I'm thinking of something like in a laboratory or something like that, where there might be, or you'd hope there was a quite a detailed lift plan. To what extent are you liaising with crane guys, on-site engineers, and indeed manufacturers of that load? Because I'm just thinking in terms of machined pick points and things like that. How do you coordinate all the dialogue?
Yeah, we have some very large projects, as you can imagine. One of the projects that we did in the last couple of years was lifting engines out of submarines, and there was probably 5 different vendors that were part of that entire lift package. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of coordination with all those vendor partners as well as the end user. We have another one going on right now where we're lifting, grabbing and lifting electrodes. And, again, there's a number of different vendors for that plant expansion that we coordinate with to make sure the entire process works for the customer.
And does that involve working with other manufacturers in your sector, or indeed to some extent or what could be perceived as being competitors as well?
No, but primarily it's other people within the industry, but not necessarily that are direct competitors. So I can't think of many applications where, or maybe any applications where we've worked directly with a competitor. And it's not that necessarily that we wouldn't, but I think if there's multiple vendors in a planned lift, typically there's going to be one company in our space that kind of does what we do, and then other companies that will add the different components of the process.
Okay, no, it's interesting because I was thinking about the amount of loads that you see still that have got all this science on them, that they don't even have any real machine ways of picking up the load. And I think if that dialogue could have taken place at the point of manufacture, it could have made your life a whole lot easier. It might have made you a bit poorer as well in a way. But am I right there? Am I looking at these loads in the right way and thinking that rigging, the complexity of that rig could have been made so much easier had and I guess it goes back to the point at the beginning. Was there the awareness about below the hook and what's required? More generally, there could be some more simplicity to it, couldn't there?
Yeah, that, you know, I was thinking the same thing as you were asking the question, that it really goes back to that earlier point about, you know, kind of, you know, valuing and understanding the role of the below the hook lifter and the rigging that goes along with it. One of the examples of that that I think of from my early days at Caldwell is that there was a very large bridge project out in Pennsylvania, and we had the customer reach out to us, and they wanted a large complex beam to be part of this erection plan. And it, as you can imagine, it required a lot of design and calculation, you know, just to quote it. And yet they wanted this beam, you know, and I can't remember the exact timing, but like in 2 weeks. And I'm like, you've probably known this bridge is going to be built for a year or two, but we're talking about you need this beam for a critical lift in a couple of weeks. And again, I think that just shows that, you know, a lot of times it gets overlooked in the entire process.
I was going to say oversight and an afterthought almost.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Doug's equipment and others that's got to work around. I mean, in an existing facility, you can understand it somewhat, but I've seen, you know, even in new builds, you see things where you know, beams and arms have got to go almost around things that, again, if there was more consideration for the lifting application. And I think this ties in, Guy, a lot of what we talk about in the summer again with GLAD, doesn't it? And just, I think, doing a better job of promoting our industry and how multifaceted it is, and giving the below the hook guys sort of a pushing them out there, because it's incredibly interesting. I mean, the diversity of, I'd urge any listener who might be new to the industry to look on the breadth of products on Caldwell's website, and I really think it just shows just how diverse the challenges are.
Oh, it's
and
vast.
It really, and it demonstrates quite literally how many industries that we have to touch on a daily basis. So I think we can definitely do a better job of pushing it along, I think.
I like it's a little bit more of a general example, but you know, Leah's Think Lifting video, you know, I thought that was a fantastic piece. And we've actually showed that to, you know, the employees at Caldwell, just you know, as one example to make them proud and make sure that they realize, you know, all the different industries that they're supporting, you know, around the world. You know, and as much as we can do that both inside the industry and outside, you know, the better off we'll be.
Well, when we produced that film, Lift and Hoist International, along with Leah, I mean, that was one of the main thrusts. We wanted to really reveal the full gamut. And I don't know if we've done that entirely, but we certainly wanted to present the full spectrum of industries that the lifting industry supports and is synonymous with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's outwardly facing, isn't it? And I think we can be very, in this industry, has done a poor job at times of being too, putting the walls up and being too inwardly focused. And it's right that the engineering is kind of the focal point, because it's very, very important and it's the heartbeat of our industry. But you've got to find a way of putting that out there, I think, in a way that better demonstrates the beauty of the equipment. And essentially what we're trying to do here is, as Ross Maloney at Lear says, is it's all about gravity, isn't it? And that's a very simple thing that we're trying to defy. And I think it's everywhere. And I think, yeah, look, collectively GLAD and Think Lifting, it done a good job of that. And I definitely think that this year, if we can get below the hook in there and continue to champion that as well as the big kit, I think we'll be going a long way to better promoting the breadth of our industry, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we suffer from the you know, I guess the impression that lifting isn't sexy. But, you know, when you look at a company like Tesla or SpaceX, you know, here in the US, you know, people spend a lot of time looking at that and talking about, you know, those being, sexy companies and sexy stocks. But there's a lot of things that Caldwell and others do to support what they make and how they do what they do. And it's our ability to figure out ways to communicate those applications in our involvement that will help support the direction.
Well, I mean, I've been to the SpaceX facility in Hawthorne, California, and I've seen the range of equipment that is used on a daily basis. I mean, and that's one of the things that I like about Caldwell, is that you present yourself as a materials handling solutions provider. And so many industries use integrated equipment, whether that's forklift trucks, aerial access equipment, overhead cranes, hoists, and everything under the hook. I mean, it's just this entire gamut of equipment is used to get a job done. And you're at the sort of you're at the helm there, aren't you? Really. You mentioned aerospace. I mean, you are prevalent in so many different industries, Doug. Is there any particular one that seems to be flying at the moment with regards to materials handling / lifting equipment and your range of equipment specifically?
I think is the economy rebounds and businesses come on back online. I think we've seen things more broadly than generally. And really, that's the way Caldwell has tried to build its business. We use the example a lot, back in the financial crisis of 2008 and 9 for us. We felt our business was less impacted because of our diversity. Other companies that we saw that were primarily automotive or primarily aerospace, it seemed like they suffered more than we did. So we've got a tremendous diversity in our customer base. We've got a tremendous diversity in our product and application base, which is a challenge. I mean, we've got to know and be able to apply things to a lot of different markets, but that diversity certainly helps us in the long run.
With the change in administration, for example, are you seeing a big uptick in wind energy, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've actually been talking about that a lot lately, and we've participated in different segments of the energy business for quite a while, but certainly green energy applications, specifically wind, is something that we feel is going to be very strong going forward. We did a lot maybe a decade ago, but you didn't feel like maybe there was at least in the US a commitment long term to wind. But I think under the current administration, I think you'll see that commitment re-energized.
And again, I'm glad we've touched upon that, because renewables generally, it's got every time you talk about lifting and renewables, you get a big crawler crane putting up a great big wind turbine with a lovely blue sky behind it, or choppy seas, as if there's only a wind turbine only ever has one lift. When it's put, it never goes into what's in the nacelle, the service, the maintenance, all the lifting and rigging that's involved in the mooring, all the weighing equipment. And again, I think it's a good example of how we do ourselves a disservice, really, because if a wind turbine only had access to one crane, which was the crawler crane that put the thing up, was obviously meaning on an onshore farm, it wouldn't get very far, would it? So it's a good example.
Yeah, I mean, we've done, for example, applications for Goldwind, where we've lifted blades, and at 500 feet you can remotely clock the blade, so you can connect it to the nacelle. So I mean, to your point, I mean, there's a lot of small detail that goes into what just seems like a big tower. I mean, there's a lot that goes into getting that up and getting it running.
And that's without the transportation of it, the load securement, the height safety. It really, it's a massive opportunity for any geography or region that's on the cusp of real steep growth in renewables. There's a massive opportunity there.
Yeah, and that's just the the erection side. There's also the manufacturing side. For example, we've worked with Vestas on construction of tower segments and the different parts of it before it even gets to the location to be erected.
Yep.
Well, guys, I've just looked at the clock, and I'm afraid time is up on this occasion. But I think we'd love to have you back, Doug. Maybe nearer, or as we approach Glad, possibly you could come on and champion Below the Hook a bit more, and we can maybe talk also about what you're doing along with other US manufacturers to drive young people into our sector, because that's obviously, that's for another conversation, but that's a massive concern for everybody around the world, of course.
Yeah, that's an important topic.
Well, we'd love to have you back on again, and I can't thank you enough for your time today, Doug.
Enjoyed it. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Rich.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Enjoyed it. And look, the industry's not boring, and it certainly isn't boring below the hook. So we should keep banging that drum.
Defo, I couldn't agree more. Well, look, thanks a lot, lads, and look forward to hopefully meeting up before too long, and we can have a beer after a long day at a trade show somewhere.
That'd be great.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Doug. Cheers, Rich.
Cheers,
thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. A lot came out of this conversation, not least how often below-the-hook technologies can be overlooked until the very last minute, or indeed until something goes wrong on site when it's too late. And an overriding message is neglect this type of equipment at your peril. Ignorance and lack of foresight can lead to disaster and bad working practice. Neither are good, considering we are in the health and safety game. Unsurprisingly, there is a tool for every occasion, and if not, manufacturers such as Caldwell are nearly always willing to work with end-user clients to advise on and develop new bespoke technologies. So much of what the lifting sector does is specialised, and research and development and consultancy leads to innovation and excellence. As Doug says, look up when you enter a facility, because there is a lot of equipment there we are not focused on. Feel free to leave comments or fire over questions if you have any. Your feedback and suggestions of future editions will enable us to make this podcast even more relevant and interesting. You can keep up to date with the latest industry news by visiting LHI's website, liftandhoist.com. Thanks for listening, and look out for the next episode in a couple of weeks. Until then, stay safe.